Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
I have killed 41 things in my life that wanted to kill me first. I tell you this not to frighten you and not to make you respect me. I tell you so you understand the weight of what comes next. So you understand that when I say I was afraid of the human, it means something. It is not a small word in my mouth. My people do not have many words for fear. We were not built to need them. My name is Vale. I came from the Spinward worlds, from a pack that had hunted the cold plains of Drakkar since before the conquered learned to count stars. I was raised the way all of us are raised. You learn to be silent before you learn to walk. You learn that the weak feed the strong, and that this is not cruelty, it is simply the shape of the world, the way water runs downhill. I believed that with my whole body. Every part of me believed it. And then they sent one human to Korth's Spire. And everything, I believed, cracked down the middle like ice over a lake in spring. Let me start at the beginning. Let me tell it the way it happened, because if I jump to the end you will not believe me, and I would not blame you. I did not believe it either, and I was standing right there. Korth's Spire sits on a world we call Venar. You will not find it on the soft maps the conquered gives to civilians. It is a hard place. The gravity is heavier than most species can stand for long, almost half again what a flat world body is used to. The storms come off the northern ocean, and they do not knock politely. They scream in over the black rock and they throw sleet sideways for days at a time, and the wind sounds like something enormous trying to get inside. That is the point. The spire was built to break people, or to find the ones who could not be broken. It is the academy, not an academy, the academy, where the conquered sends the children of its predator races to be made into officers. The Drakkari, my people, the Threll with their bone plate and their patience. The Ossic who can hold their breath for an hour and smile while they do it. The Vor. The Kithra. All the species the galaxy is quietly glad are on its side, because the thought of them on the other side does not let anyone sleep. We are the hunters of the conquered. That is not a boast. It is a job. Other species build the ships and grow the food and argue in the long halls of governance. We are the ones who go into the dark when the dark comes for them. We have done it for 1,000 years. We were proud of it. I was proud of it. You did not get sent to Korth's Spire. You earned it, or your bloodline earned it for you, and either way the Spire did not care who your family was once the gates closed behind you. Inside those walls, blood meant nothing. Only what you could do. I respected that. We all did. It was the one honest thing in a galaxy full of soft lies. So you can imagine the silence in the great hall, the day the provost stood up on the black stone dais and told us there would be a human in the next intake. You could have heard a feather land. A human. You have to understand what that word meant to us then. The humans were new, barely a generation off their own little blue rock, blinking in the light of the wider galaxy like cubs pulled out of a den too early. Soft-skinned. No claws to speak of. They had these flat little things on the ends of their fingers that wouldn't open a fruit, let alone a throat. No fur, no plates, no venom, no spines. Eyes that only faced forward, which any cub on Drakkar could tell you is the mark of prey trying to look like something it is not. Prey. That is what we called them when we called them anything at all. The conquered had a kinder word: emerging, developing. But behind the long words everyone knew what they meant. The humans were the rabbits of the galaxy, quick to breed, quick to die, useful for nothing dangerous. Some of the merchant species liked them because they would work cheaply and complain politely. That was the whole of their reputation. And the provost was telling us one of them was coming here. To Korth's Spire, where we trained the things the galaxy was afraid of. There was a sound in the hall, Not laughter, we do not laugh the way the soft species do, but a kind of low ripple of disbelief, 100 throats clicking at once. I remember Threll cadets actually turning to look at each other, and Threll do not move their heads for anything. One of the senior Vor, an instructor with 3 rings of rank scarred into his arm, made a noise I had only ever heard him make over a fresh kill, a noise of pure contempt. The provost let it run. She was old, that one. Drakari like me, but from a southern line with gray coming into the black around her muzzle, and one eye gone milk-white from something she never spoke about. Her name was Circe. She had killed more than 41 things, I promise you that. She let the contempt fill the hall, and then she said one sentence that shut it off like a closed valve. It is not your place to question the conquered's decision. It is your place to watch it fail. And the hall went quiet again, because that we understood, that we could get behind. The human was not coming to be one of us. The human was coming to be a lesson. The conquered, in its endless soft-handed wisdom, had decided to extend opportunity to the new species to let them try to be fair. And the Spire had agreed because the Spire knew exactly what would happen. The human would come. The human would break. And every developing world watching the feeds would see, in their own eyes, what the gap between prey and predator truly looked like. It was, we all agreed, an elegant cruelty. We approved of it. We were a place that approved of elegant cruelties. I was 19 cycles old. I was in my second year, and I remember thinking very clearly as I filed out of that hall into the screaming wind, I almost feel sorry for it. Almost. He arrived 11 days later, on a gray transport that came down through the storm and landed hard on the upper pad. We were not supposed to be watching. We were supposed to be at drill, but you could not keep 300 Predator cadets from finding a window when something like this was happening, and the instructors, if I am honest, were watching too. The whole Spire held its breath that morning. I think every soul inside those walls wanted the same thing, to see the prey, to measure it, to confirm with our own senses what we already knew. The ramp came down. Steam rolled off the hot metal into the cold air. And out walked the smallest thing I had ever seen volunteer for a war college. He was, I want to be careful here, because memory likes to make things grander than they were. He was not weak-looking, exactly. He was just small, compared to us. A Drakari cadet stands a head and a half taller than any human, with the long limbs and the heavy shoulders that come from a homeworld that never let our ancestors rest. The Threll are bigger still. The human came down that ramp and the wind nearly took him off his feet, and he had to widen his stance and lean into it, and a kind of low, pleased murmur went around the watching cadets, because there it was. There was the prey, staggering in a wind we did not even notice anymore. But he did not stop. He leaned into the wind, found his footing, and kept walking. Down the ramp, across the open pad, straight toward the great doors. He did not hunch. He did not cover his head. He just lowered his center and pushed through it, step by step, and there was something about the plainness of it that I did not have a word for yet. He wore a plain dark uniform, no markings, no house, no rank. He carried one bag. His skin was a brown like riverbed clay, and his hair was black and cut close, and the wind whipped sleet against his bare face, and he just squinted and kept going. When he reached the doors, the wind dropped for a moment, the way it does in the gaps between gusts, and in that sudden quiet I heard him do something that I will remember until I am as gray as Circe. He laughed. A short, surprised, breathless little sound. He looked back at the storm he had just walked through, and he laughed at it, the way you laugh at something that nearly got you but didn't. And then he turned and went inside. I was standing close enough to see his eyes when he passed, forward-facing, yes, small, prey eyes. But there was nothing in them that I recognized as prey. His name was Wes Carter. He was 23 of his own years old, which made him a little older than most of us in our reckoning. He had come from a place on his homeworld called the High Desert, a dry land of stone and heat, which I would learn mattered more than any of us could have guessed. We did not know any of that yet. All we knew that first morning was that the prey had arrived, and it had not died on the landing pad, and that was honestly more than half of us had wagered on. The first 30 days at Korth Spire are called the stripping. It is exactly what it sounds like. They take everything you think you are and they pull it off you, layer by layer, until they can see what is actually underneath. Where you came from, what your bloodline did, how many things you killed back home, none of it survives the stripping. By the end of it, you are nothing but what you can do when you are exhausted and cold, and there is no one coming to help you. For predator cadets raised hard from birth, the stripping is brutal. It breaks roughly 1 in 5 of us, and we are the strong ones. We are the children of hunters. I will be honest with you about what the entire Spire believed in those first days. We believed the human would not survive the stripping. Would not pass. Would not survive. We genuinely, calmly, expected to watch the prey die of cold or exhaustion within the month, and we expected to feel nothing about it, the way you feel nothing about the weather. I want you to hold onto that belief, the way I held onto it, because I am going to tell you how it died. It started with the cold. The first thing the Spire does is take away comfort. They run the dormitory cold, not dangerous, but punishing, the kind of cold that gets into your joints and stays there. They wake you in the deep of the night and march you out onto the black rock for hours. They feed you just enough and never quite when your body wants it. The point is to find out who falls apart when the world stops being kind. The Drakari handle the cold by slowing down. We have a thing inside us, an old reflex from the cold plains, that lets us pull our heat into our core and go still and patient and quiet. The Threll handle it by simply not caring. Their bone plate doesn't feel much. The Ossic are from a cold world to begin with. The human had none of that. I remember the first night they marched us out. We stood in ranks on the upper field in a sleet that would have stripped paint, and the instructors walked the lines looking for weakness, and every eye in the place, cadet and instructor both, kept drifting to the small dark shape at the end of the row where they had put the human. He was shaking. Of course he was shaking. He had no fur, no plate, nothing but that thin clay-colored skin and the standard-issue uniform, which was never designed for a body like his. He shook so hard I could see it from 4 ranks away. His teeth were doing something, clattering together, a sound I had never heard a living creature make on purpose. I thought, there it is. Tonight. He goes down tonight. He did not go down. He shook for 4 hours. He stood in that line and shook, and his teeth chattered, and at one point I saw an instructor, a Vor, the one with 3 rings, the one who had made the contempt noise in the hall, walk up and stand directly in front of him, close, the way you do to break a cadet's nerve. Loomed over him, waited for him to flinch or step back or fall. And the human looked up at him. Up and up, because the Vor was enormous. And through chattering teeth, he said something I did not catch, but the cadets near him repeated for weeks afterward. He said, "Cold one too, sir." Like they were sharing it. Like the cold was a thing happening to both of them, and he was just commenting on the weather. Making a little joke about it, with a soldier he should have been terrified of, in a voice that was shaking apart at the seams. The Vor did not know what to do with that. None of us did. The Vor stared at him for a long moment and then walked away, and I swear on my 41 kills, the Vor's stride was just slightly off, just slightly thrown, the way you walk when something has happened that you did not have a plan for. I told myself it meant nothing. The prey was babbling. Cold makes the mind soft. But I noticed I was looking at him differently after that, and I hated that I was. The thing about the human, the thing none of us could have known from the Concord's tidy little files, was that he did not seem to understand he was supposed to lose. We have a concept in the old tongue of Drakkar. The word is Keshvar. It means roughly the moment the prey knows. It is the instant in a hunt when the thing you are chasing understands, all the way down, that it is going to die. Something goes out of it. The fight leaves the body even before the body stops moving. Every predator species has felt it. We build our whole understanding of the world around it. There is the one who knows it is going to die, and there is the one who makes it know. That is the entire shape of things. We kept waiting for the human's HFY. It never came. You would push him to the absolute edge, the cold, the marches, the hunger, the endless contempt, and the prey moment would not arrive. Instead, something else happened that we had no name for at all. He would get to the edge, the place where any sensible creature gives up, and then he would do this thing with his jaw, set it, and keep going. Not because he didn't understand he might die. We learned later he understood it perfectly well. He kept going anyway with full knowledge, which is a different thing entirely and a far more frightening one. The Threll have a saying that the bravest creature is the one that does not know the danger. The human taught the whole spire that the saying is wrong. The bravest creature is the one that knows exactly how bad it is and decides, on purpose, with a set jaw, to keep walking into it. I did not have the words for any of this at the time. At the time, I just had a growing, crawling discomfort that I could not explain, watching the prey refuse to be prey. He should have failed the endurance trials. Every model said so. We were faster than him over short distances, much faster. A Drakari in a sprint is a beautiful and terrible thing. The Vor can leap. The Ossic can climb anything. In every test of explosive power, the human placed last, dead last, embarrassingly last, and we all relaxed a little, because here at last was the natural order reasserting itself. And then came the Long March. The Long March is exactly what it sounds like, and it is the cruelest thing the Spire does in the first 30 days. They take you out into the broken country beyond the Spire and they make you move. No sprinting, just moving. Hour after hour after hour over the black rock, through the cold with a load on your back. There is no enemy. There is no clever trick. There is only the distance and your own body and the question of which gives out first. It runs for 3 days. Most cadets remember it as the worst thing they have ever done. I want to describe to you what happened on the Long March, because this is the part where I stopped being able to lie to myself. The first day, the human fell behind. Of course he did. He was the smallest. The load was nearly as cruel for him as for anyone, and we all watched the little dark shape drift toward the back of the column, and we thought, now, this is where the prey finally stops. But he didn't stop. He just settled into a pace. A steady, plodding, unglamorous pace, this rolling stride that ate the ground without ever looking fast, and he held it. Hour after hour he held it. And here is the thing. Here is the thing none of us knew about humans, the thing the Concord's files never bothered to put in, because the species that wrote those files thought of humans as office workers and dock laborers and nothing more. We were faster than him, but by the end of the first day we were tired. By the middle of the second day, the strongest Drakari in my cohort, a cadet named Corin who had killed a grown rack beast back home and never let anyone forget it, was sitting on a rock with his head down, breathing in long, ragged pulls, his beautiful explosive muscles cramping and seizing because they were never built for this, for endurance, for the grinding, endless gray of distance without end. And the human walked past him. Same plodding pace, same rolling stride, soaked through, and here is the strange part, here is the part that made the Threll instructor stop and stare. He was wet, not from the sleet, from himself. His skin was leaking water, sheeting it, running down his face and his arms and steaming faintly in the cold, and we all thought he was breaking down, that his body was failing, that this was some final pre-collapse. It wasn't. We learned later it was the opposite. It was the trick. It was the thing his people's bodies do, the secret weapon hidden inside that soft, hairless skin we had all sneered at. He could shed heat. While our bodies, the bodies of every proud predator species at that academy, built up heat with every step until we had to stop or cook from the inside, the human just leaked it away, poured it off his skin in water and kept moving. His ancestors, we found out, had hunted that way, on his hot homeworld. In the high desert he came from, the old humans had not been the fastest things on the plain. They had been the most patient. They had picked a creature, any creature, faster and stronger than themselves, and they had simply followed it, walked after it, for hours, for a whole day sometimes. Through the worst heat, when every fast, strong thing had to stop and rest in the shade or die, the humans just kept coming, leaking water, never stopping, until the fast, strong thing finally fell down from exhaustion and could not get up, and the patient, hairless creatures walked up to it on their own two legs and finished it. They were not the lions of their world. They were the thing the lions could not get away from. I did not know any of that on the second day of the long march. All I knew was that the prey had just walked past Corin, the Rakak killer, while Corin sat on a rock and shook, and that the human had glanced at him, glanced at the strongest of us, broken on a stone, and instead of taking the victory, instead of doing the natural thing, the correct thing, and leaving the weak to feed the strong, the human stopped. He stopped and he turned around and he walked back to Corin, this proud predator who had spent 30 days looking at the human like something stuck to his boot, and he crouched down next to him in the freezing wind, and he took out his own water ration, his own, the thing keeping him alive, and he held it out. And he said, "Drink, small sips. You'll cramp worse if you gulp it." Corin stared at him. I was close enough now to see Corin's face, and I will never forget it, because it was the face of a creature whose entire understanding of the world had just been handed a contradiction it could not hold. The strong do not help the weak feed the strong, water runs downhill. This is the shape of the world. And here was the weakest creature in the spire, the prey, the rabbit, the joke. Here he was on his knees in the sleet, giving his water to the strong, asking nothing, expecting nothing, just doing it because. And this is the part that broke something in me, standing there watching, just doing it because to him it was obvious. Because in whatever strange backward world that small hairless creature came from, you did not leave someone behind on the rock. You just didn't. It wasn't even a decision. You could see on his face it wasn't even a decision. Corin drank. Small sips. And the human got him up. Got an arm under him, and he was so much smaller, he had to brace his whole body to do it, and he got the Rakak killer onto his feet. And the two of them walked the rest of the second day together, the proud predator and the patient prey, the human matching his pace down to keep Corin moving, talking to him low and steady the whole way, and I followed about 20 paces back and I listened, and the human was telling Corin about his desert, about the heat, about how his grandfather used to walk after antelope for a whole day under a sun that would kill any of us, and how the trick wasn't being strong, the trick was never stopping. The trick was you just decided you were the one who didn't stop, and then you didn't. And how the antelope was faster and bigger and better in every single way, except it could not outlast a human who had made up his mind. He was not bragging, that was the thing. He was just sharing it, giving it to Corin like he gave the water. Here, take this, it'll help you, we'll get there. I had killed 41 things in my life. And I walked 20 paces behind a creature I had been taught was food, listening to him give away the only thing keeping him alive to an enemy who had despised him. And I felt something cold open up in my chest that had nothing to do with the wind. It was the beginning of understanding. I just didn't want to understand it yet. By the end of the long march, the story had spread through the whole spire, the way fire spreads through dry grass. The human had finished. Not first, he never finished first at anything that wasn't pure endurance. But he had finished on his own feet with Corin leaning on him, and Corin had finished too, when by every law of the place Corin should have been left on that rock to learn the lesson the rock teaches. 2 cadets came in who should have been 1. The instructors logged it. They did not know what to write. And something started happening among the cadets that the spire had never seen before, that the spire was not built to handle. The contempt started turning into something else. Not respect. Not yet. It was too strange for respect. It was more like the careful, watchful attention you give a thing you have realized you do not understand. The predator's oldest instinct, older even than the hunt, the instinct that says, "I do not know what this is, and I do not know what it can do, and until I do, I will watch it very, very closely. The Vor instructor, the one with 3 rings, stopped looming at the human in the line. Instead, he started standing near him, just near, watching, the way you watch whether you have not seen before. Corin, and this is the part that still strains belief, even for me, even now, Corin started sitting near the human at the cold meals, saying nothing at first. Just sitting there, this huge proud Drakari with a Rakak kill to his name, parking himself next to the smallest creature in the room and daring anyone with a look to make something of it. The Rakak killer had decided in his own silent way that the human belonged to him now, that he owed something. We do not have a clean word for it. The closest is a word that means the debt you carry for the one who pulled you off the rock. And it is a heavy word in our tongue, a word for a thing that lasts a lifetime. I watched all of it from the edges where I always watch things, and I felt the floor of my whole life shifting under me. Everything I had been raised to know, the strong, the weak, the prey, the order of the world, the beautiful, clean cruelty of it, all of it was being quietly disassembled by one small, wet creature who didn't even seem to be trying to disassemble anything. He was just being what he was, being human. Which apparently meant being the thing that does not stop, and the thing that does not leave you on the rock. And somehow, impossibly, those two things turned out to be the same thing. The provost watched too, Circe with her milk-white eye. I caught her on the high gallery one evening, looking down at the mess hall where Corin sat his silent watch beside the human, and I could not read her old face at all. The spire had brought the human here to fail, to be a lesson for the soft worlds, and instead the human was becoming a lesson for us, and I think Circe knew it before any of us did, and I do not think she was sorry. The stripping ended. 30 days. The human survived it. He did not just survive it, he came through it with something none of the rest of us had, something the cold and the hunger and the marches had revealed instead of destroyed, the way the stripping is supposed to reveal the thing underneath. What was underneath, the human was not prey. What was underneath the human was the most dangerous thing I have ever met, and I did not understand why yet, and that not understanding kept me awake at night in the cold dormitory, staring at the dark, turning it over and over. I had thought the Conquered had made a mistake, sending one human to Korth's spire. I was right, they had made a mistake. I just had the direction wrong. It was not the human who was going to learn the gap between prey and predator. It was us. There is more. There is so much more, and the worst of it, the day everything came apart, the day the storm came down off the northern ocean worse than anyone living had seen it, the day the human did the thing that the whole galaxy would eventually hear about, all of that is still ahead. But I have to stop the telling here for a moment. Not because the story stops, because you need to be standing where I was standing at the end of those 30 days, believing what I believed, so that when I tell you what happened next, you feel the ground go out from under you the way it went out from under me. We thought the worst was over for the human. We were wrong about that too. The storm that broke us came in the 90th day. I have to tell you about the season first, or you won't understand the size of what happened. On Venar there is a thing the locals call the long throat, a stretch of days, deep in the cold season, when the northern ocean and the Black Mountains line up just so, and the wind funnels down out of the dark like the world is trying to clear its lungs. It happens once a generation. The old Threll instructors talked about it the way you talk about a death in the family. Quiet, careful. As if saying it too loud might call it sooner. Circe called us into the great hall 3 days before it hit. She stood on the black dais, and she did not waste words. The long throat is coming, she said. The spire has weathered 9 of them. We will weather a 10th. You will stay inside the inner halls. You will not go to the outer field, the upper pads, or the ridge stations for any reason. Cadets have died in the throat. Better cadets than you. That was all. We filed out. And I remember thinking the human looked different that day, more still than usual, watching Circe with those forward eyes, taking it in the way he took everything in quietly, completely, filing it somewhere. I did not know then that the human had spent his free hours, the few we got up at the ridge stations, helping the weather crews. Nobody had ordered him to. He just started doing it, the way he did things, drifting toward whatever needed doing, and the old Osik who ran the weather post had let him stay because the human asked good questions and never once complained about the cold. He knew those stations. He knew the cadets who manned them. That mattered. That mattered more than any of us could have known. The throat came in early. That was the first thing that went wrong. It came in half a day before the models said it would, and it came in harder, and it caught the rotation mid-change. There were cadets out at the ridge stations when the wind hit, a small crew, 6 of them, sent up before dawn to bring the last of the sensor arrays inside. They were supposed to be back before the worst of it. They did not come back. I was in the inner hall when the alarm went. It is a sound I had never heard before and have never heard since, a long, low, falling note that means we have lost someone to the weather. The whole spire stopped. 300 predator cadets, the children of the deadliest species in the Concord, and we all stood there in the warm inner halls and listened to that falling note and understood that 6 of us were out in the throat. And there was nothing to be done. That is the part nobody tells you about. You think, when you are young and full of yourself and you have killed 41 things, that there is always something to be done. That courage is a key that fits every lock, but the throat was not a thing you could fight. The wind off the ridge was strong enough to lift a grown Threll off his feet and throw him into the rocks. The cold out there would stop a Drakari heart in minutes. We learned fast from the weather crew that a rescue team had already been refused. Circe herself had refused it, because sending strong, fast predators into that wind was not a rescue. It was just feeding more of us to the mountain. The math was simple and it was merciless, and it was exactly the kind of math our whole world was built on. 6 were already as good as gone. You do not throw 12 after 6. The strong do not die for the lost. Water runs downhill. I watched Circe give that order. Her old face did not move, but her one good eye did something, just for a second, and I understood that giving the order cost her more than killing ever had. She was doing the correct thing, the predator thing, the thing the whole galaxy trusted us to be able to do, to count the cost and pay only what we had to and not a drop more. The 6 on the ridge included Corin, the Rakak killer, the one the human had pulled off the rock. I saw the human's face when that name came down the line. I was watching him. I was always watching him by then. We all were, and I saw it land. I saw him go very, very still, stiller than I had ever seen him. And then I saw him do the jaw thing, said it. And I knew, with a cold certainty that had nothing to do with the storm, exactly what the human was going to do. I just didn't believe he would actually do it. He went to the gear locker. He did it quietly. No speeches. The human never made speeches. That was a thing about him. He did the loudest things in the quietest way. He went to the locker and he started pulling on the heavy weather rig, the ridge gear, the suits the weather crews used, and an Osik cadet named Thessa saw him and said, "What are you doing?" And the human said, without stopping, without even looking up, "I'm going to go get them." Thessa told me later there was a moment where she genuinely thought he had gone mad, storm mad. It happens, the falling note, the helplessness, it cracks people. She said, "You can't. Circe refused the rescue. The wind out there will kill you. It will kill us and we're built for it. You're." And she stopped, because she had been about to say your prey. 90 days ago she would have said it without a thought. And now the word would not come out of her mouth, because it was not true anymore, and everyone in that locker room knew it was not true. The human finished sealing the rig, and he turned around and he looked at the cadets who had gathered. There were maybe a dozen of us by then, drawn by the sight of the small, dark creature suiting up against an impossible storm, and he said something I have carried in my chest every day since. He said, "Your math is right. 6 for 1, that's bad math. You don't send more people to die for people who are already dying. I know, it's good math." He pulled the hood up. But it's only good math if they're already dead, and I'm the only one here who knows they might not be. Nobody understood. He saw we didn't understand, so he explained it fast in that low, steady desert voice. You can't go out there because the cold stops your hearts and the wind throws you into the rocks. Both true. But the cold doesn't stop my heart the way it stops yours. I run hot, I shed heat, I can layer up and burn my own fuel for hours where you'd freeze in minutes. And the wind, he almost smiled. The wind can't throw what stays low and slow. You're all tall, you're all fast. Out there, tall and fast is how you die. Low and slow and patient is how you live. That's not bravery. That's the one place in this whole galaxy where my body is the right tool, and yours is the wrong one. He said, it's not brave to send a body that'll freeze. It's just brave to send the one that won't. And then the human said the thing that ended the argument. He said Corin pulled me off no rock. I pulled him off the rock. He didn't owe me anything for it, and I don't owe him anything now. That's not why I'm going. He looked at us, all of us, the deadliest young creatures in the Concord, standing safe in the warm. I'm going because nobody should die out there alone thinking nobody came. That's it. That's the whole reason. Where I'm from, you go. You just go. And he turned and walked into the airlock, and the inner door sealed, and the small dark shape vanished into the white. I want to tell you what the next 4 hours were like, but I'm not sure the words exist. We could not follow him. He was right about that, and we hated that he was right. 300 predators, and the only thing we could do was crowd around the Ridge Station feed in the weather post and watch a single thermal smear of a human shape crawl out into the throat on its hands and knees. On its hands and knees. That was how he did it. The wind was too strong to stand in, so he didn't stand. He crawled. Low and slow, exactly like he'd said, spreading his weight, hugging the rock, moving through gusts that would have launched any of us into the dark. He used the storm's own rhythm. And there was a rhythm. The throat breathed, gust and lull, and the human had learned it in his hours at the weather post. And he moved in the lulls and flattened himself in the gusts, and he crawled up that ridge one body length at a time. It took him an hour to reach the first station. The feed there had gone dark, so we had nothing but his suit beacon and the thermal smear. We watched the smear reach the station. We watched it stop. And then I will never forget the sound the weather post made, 12 predators all making the same low broken noise at once. We watched a second thermal smear appear beside his, and a third, and a fourth. 4 of the 6 were alive. They had done the right thing, the trained thing. When the wind hit, they'd sheltered in the station shell, packed together for warmth. And they were cold past the point of moving, but they were alive. And the human had reached them. And now we watched him do the thing that no model in the Concord had ever accounted for. He could not carry them. He was the smallest. He could not carry a single grown predator down that ridge in that wind. So he didn't carry them. He roped them. He had brought line, of course he had. He'd planned this in the 30 seconds it took to suit up, his desert mind already 3 moves ahead. He roped the 4 of them together and to himself, and he got the strongest of them moving, and he taught them, right there on the ridge in the screaming dark. The thing his ancestors knew. Low, slow, move in the lulls, flatten in the gusts, don't try to be strong. Strong dies up here, just don't stop. Be the thing that doesn't stop. He turned 4 dying predators into desert humans for 1 hour. He gave them his ancestors' oldest secret because it was the only thing that could get them home. And 1 body length at a time, in the lulls between the storm's breaths, the rope of them came down off the ridge. 2 of the 6 were already gone when he reached the station. He could not save them. He told us about it later once and never again, and his voice when he said it was a thing I do not have the heart to describe. He had reached 2 cadets too late, and the human who would not leave anyone on the rock had to leave them on the rock because 4 living things were roped to him and the storm does not negotiate. That was the cost. He paid it. It marked him. The strong, it turns out, are not the ones who never have to count the cost. The strong are the ones who count it and pay it, and carry it afterward without setting it down on anyone else. Corin was one of the 4 who lived. They came through the airlock in the 5th hour. I was there. I was right there when the inner door opened and the cold rolled out and the rope of them stumbled into the warm, 4 predators, half frozen, alive, and at the front of the rope on his feet, barely, soaked through and steaming and white-lipped with a cold his hot running body had finally started to lose to the human. He got them inside. He counted them. I watched him count them, 4, his lips moving, 4, making sure, and only when he had counted them did he let himself go down. His knees just stopped holding him. Corin caught him. The Rakak killer, who could barely stand himself, got an arm under the small dark creature and held him up, the exact mirror of the rock on the long march, the det running the other way now, and the human looked up at him and said something, and Corin made a sound I have never heard a Drakari make, before or since. The whole spire was in that hall, 300 of us, and nobody said anything. Nobody knew how. There is no ceremony in our cultures for what the human had just done, because our cultures had never imagined it was possible. The small one had gone out into the death that swallowed the strong, and the small one had come back, and he had brought 4 of the strong back with him, and he had done it not with strength but with the precise opposite of strength, with patience, with stillness, with the refusal to stop, with a kind of courage so quiet it didn't even look like courage from the outside. Serse came down off the high gallery. The provost, the one who had refused the rescue. She walked through the silent ranks and she stood in front of the human, who was still half collapsed in Corin's arms, and she looked at him with her one good eye for a long, long time. And then the oldest, hardest, deadliest creature in Korth's spire lowered her head to the human. You have to understand what that is. We do not bow. Predators do not show the throat. To lower the head is to offer the killing place, the soft line of the neck, to another. It is the deepest thing one of us can do, older than language, the body saying I trust you with the one thing I would never trust anyone with. I had never seen Serse do it to anyone. I am not sure she had ever done it to anyone. She did it to the human. And then, one by one, all down the great hall, 300 predator cadets lowered their heads to the prey. I lowered mine too. I had killed 41 things in my life, and I stood in that hall and showed my throat to a soft-skinned creature from a little blue world, and it was the first time in my whole life that the gesture meant exactly what it was supposed to mean. Not fear, not submission, the other thing, the thing underneath, the thing the throat barring was always reaching for and almost never found. Trust. He recovered. It took a while. The cold had finally gotten into him. His hot running body had spent itself out on that ridge, and for 2 days the spire's medics fought to bring his core temperature back, and the whole academy held its breath in a way it had not held its breath even for the throat itself. But he recovered. He was tougher than any of us. In the end, in the way that mattered, the only way that had ever mattered, the way none of us had been able to see for 90 days because we were looking at his soft skin and his flat little claws and his forward-facing eyes, and missing the thing that was actually there. He graduated Korth Spire, first in his cohort, not first in any single trial, he never was, but first overall, because the Spire, in its old wisdom, had finally figured out what it was measuring for. The Conquered had sent him to be a lesson for the soft worlds. He became a lesson for the hard ones instead. They changed things after him. The Spire opened its gates to the developing worlds for real, not as cruelty, not as theater, but because Serse stood on the black dais and told 300 predator cadets a thing that is now carved into the stone above the inner doors, the thing every cadet who comes through Korth Spire reads on their first day. The deadliest thing in the galaxy is not the one with the most teeth. It is the one that will not stop and will not leave you behind. I am old now, older than Serse was that day. I have gray coming into the black around my own muzzle, and I have carried this story for a long time, and I tell it to the young ones when they come to me believing the things I once believed. that the strong feed on the weak, that prey is prey, that water runs downhill, and that is the whole shape of the world. I tell them about the human. I tell them I served with him after, for 30 years, that he was the finest officer I ever stood beside, and that he never once raised his voice, and that he never once left anyone on the rock, not in 30 years, not when it was easy and not when it cost him everything, and that I followed him into places that should have killed us both because I knew, the way you know the ground under your feet, that he would have crawled out into any storm in this galaxy to bring me home. He's gone now. Humans don't last as long as we do. That's the cruelest joke the galaxy ever played to make the bravest thing in it the thing with the shortest time. I was there at the end. I got an arm under him, the way Corin once did, the way he taught all of us to do, and I held him up, and I counted one, just the one, and I made sure. The young ones always ask me the same thing. They ask if the Conquered really made a mistake, sending one human to Predator Academy. And I tell them yes. The galaxy thought it knew what a predator was. It thought it had us all measured, all the teeth and the claws and the venom, all the deadly children of the deadly worlds, and it sent one soft creature among us to prove the gap could never be crossed. It crossed the gap in 90 days, and then it spent 30 years teaching the rest of us that the gap had never been where we thought it was. We were the predators. He was the thing the predators learned to follow. And I have killed 41 things in my life, but the only one I ever truly feared, and the only one I ever truly loved, was the one who never killed anything he didn't have to, and never stopped, and never, ever left anyone behind. That was the mistake they made. They sent us a human, and he taught us how to be worth following.